Someone shut that relay down before it loops again, snapped Threx Molad, hunched over a dim analytics console in the auxiliary tier of Relay Chamber 6B. His fingers danced across a tactile interface embedded in the desk. No flourish, no rhythm, just method. Across the curved wall, a laser plasma display stuttered with a repeating sequence of ancient registry pings. The loop hadn't originated from any known quadrant. "It's Terran," muttered Adjunct Jarnus from behind him, voice cautious but not unsure. "Protocol shell matches Echo-class Dominion tier pre-repeal era." Threx didn't turn. Echo-class Dominion protocols were sunset 300 cycles ago. If it's pinging now, it's not legacy. It's active. He reached up and expanded the flickering window. 7 glyphs shimmered momentarily, angular, slanted, and unmistakably human. The 8th blinked once, then vanished. Chairman Ivan Rask entered the chamber with his usual weightless gait, hands clasped at the small of his back, robes dragging with whispering indifference. "Tell me we're not chasing Terran ghosts again." Threx stood, rubbing the back of his neck where the collar of his audit vest bit into his skin. "I'm telling you this wasn't archived. The packet activated during a compliance scan on an unrelated security lattice." "Meaning?" Rask stepped forward, eyes resting not on the data, but on the chair, the one embedded at the chamber's far end, obsidian, angular, untouched since the chamber's foundation was poured. It had no sigil, no delegation crest, and no thermal signature. "Meaning," said Threx slowly, "Earth never shut down their observation net. They just left it, sleeping." The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was exact. The obsidian chair stood at the periphery like an accusation sculpted into furniture. Its angles refused the overhead wash of chamber lights, absorbing illumination without casting a shadow. A node of density in a room engineered for transparency. Rask's brow furrowed, and no other sectors flagged it. "We never triggered the specific handshake." Threx's voice dropped. "Until today. The query we sent wasn't even meant for it. The response was conditional, not automated. The chamber's environmental systems adjusted as if in response, temperatures subtly declining, the filtered air acquiring the sterile dryness of uncirculated data centers. Rask felt it on his skin, not as discomfort, but as administrative trespass, as though the room now belonged to someone else. He turned. "Seal this chamber. No uplinks, no quorum access." Jarnus flinched. "That violates procedural openness." "I'm not interested in procedure," Rask interrupted, his tone stone-cut. "I'm interested in who's listening." A dull click echoed overhead as the outer relay ports deactivated one by one. The chamber dimmed slightly, not darker, but reduced in its broadcast posture. Threx rotated the display, shifting the viewpoint from the raw code interface to an orbital distribution model. The planetary overlay updated in silence. 48 Terran-rooted subnodes blinked across 8 systems, all previously classified as inert treaty scaffolds, none marked by active factions. "They were always under us," Jarnus said aloud, his voice too soft for comfort. Rask narrowed his gaze. "Is there movement?" "Not yet. No fleet deployment, no encrypted command trails, but their entropy diagnostics are compiling. That's not passive storage behavior. It's predictive calibration." Rask exhaled slowly. "They're not watching for something to happen." Threx nodded grimly. "They're waiting for something they already predicted to start." The obsidian chair remained unchanged, unmoved, yet the entire room seemed to pivot toward it, not physically, but psychologically. Rask stepped forward. He stopped within a meter of it, gaze locked. "How long have we been pretending we outgrew them?" Threx replied without turning. "Since Clause Delta was repealed. Since they walked out." "No, not walked," Rask muttered. "Withdrew, left a placeholder behind." Silence fell again, but this time it felt sharpened. Not an absence of sound, but the removal of any non-essential auditory signal, as if Earth's systems were cleansing the space in real time. On the screen, the map blinked once more. This time, a node lit up, not due to local action, but because something somewhere else stopped. A void border signal, previously erratic, flatlined. The sector didn't flash red, it went colorless, removed from the registry. No alert, no debris, no timestamp. "System Krenval 7, Threx whispered. "It just ceased." "No report," Jarnus croaked. "No signal, no atmospheric rupture, Just a relay collapse, as if it was folded out of relevance. Rask didn't blink. How long before the other systems notice? They won't, Threx said, unless they know what to look for, and the only ones who ever did. He trailed off, glancing at the obsidian monolith behind Rask. The chair didn't glow, it didn't vibrate. It simply existed in a way that now felt less like absence and more like surveillance. Rask stepped back from it, brushing his sleeve across the control pad embedded into the counselor tier. He sent a direct order, closed procedural audit, Tier Alpha, access limited to emergency channel protocols. We're declaring internal protocol review. Jarnus balked. That'll send flags across 3 branches. We don't have 3 branches, Rask said, turning toward the sealed doors. We have one truth, and we've ignored it for a century. The door hissed open, not in greeting, but as a consequence of order. Rask paused, looking over his shoulder once. The obsidian chair remained unchanged, yet in the reflection of the plasma console, it no longer looked empty. Not occupied either, simply accounted for. Outside the chamber, at the security tier junction, a young systems courier named Denvin approached the security desk with an encrypted tablet. Delivery for Chair Rask, confirmed relay tier classification override. The guard took the tablet, hesitated, then narrowed his eyes at the courier's badge. You know your delivery just got flagged by 6 layers of auto-review. Denvin didn't blink. That's why I brought it in person. He turned and walked away without waiting for a signature. Inside the tablet was no message, just a diagnostic string. 8 Terran origin nodes, active synchronization, subspace calibration, complete. Obsidian lattice reactivation level, pending instruction directive timestamp, not authorized by local command. It was signed with a single designation, Observer Node SOL Grav Echo, and below that in grayscale plain text, we never left. You're going to want to see this.
Now.
That was the only warning Director Liss received before the Senate Doc Zero alarm locked every subchannel under emergency code isolation. Threx Molad's voice had carried no panic, no emphasis. It was worse than urgency. It was certainty. Chairman Rask stood in the observation corridor just above the dock's threshold. Through the security glass, the landing grid flickered with grid synchronization anomalies, patterns not seen in nearly 3 centuries. The floor plates didn't align as expected. Instead, they shimmered, flickers cascading outward like ink in charged water. No announcement, no call sign, no identification request. Just arrival. Jarnus leaned in toward the security console. He bypassed 8 levels of lockstep code just to dock. Nothing tripped. It accepted him like he still belonged. Rask didn't look away from the incoming vessel, which was already aligning for silent descent. There's only one name authorized for that envelope tier. The ship didn't bear insignia. No light markers. No wing burn. It moved as though the environment bent to accommodate it, not forcibly, but with ritual. And then the lock shift engaged. The dock hissed with a pressurization tone, so unfamiliar that several junior aides instinctively looked toward exits. Above them, the ceiling panels dimmed, not as a glitch, but as if illumination had been reassigned. From the corridor, the shape of the vessel clarified. Its surface was not smooth. Its surface was unreadable, like folded paper coated with instructions not meant to be seen until touched. When the access gate hissed open, the temperature didn't rise or fall, it just stabilized, unnervingly neutral. The man who stepped into view didn't wear the colors of any council, faction, or territory. His coat was earth dark, collar high, clasp undone, trailing like a half-forgotten regulation. His boots carried frost from somewhere no system registered, and his eyes scanned nothing directly, yet nothing missed him. Varric Solon hadn't been seen in over 200 years. Jarnus stumbled back. That can't be him. Rask spoke without blinking. That's exactly what makes it him. Solon walked without speaking, without hesitating. Each stride mapped terrain the Senate hadn't acknowledged in generations. As he passed the gate's final threshold, the central registry lights flickered, not erratically, but as if adjusting to an operating system they didn't know still existed. He did not report to the podium. He did not pause for clearance. He didn't even look upward at the watching floor tiers. Instead, he stopped in the heart of the landing corridor, unclipped a worn relay core from his belt, and placed it on the floor without ceremony. The core spun once. Silence stretched across every open comm frequency. Then the data ignited. A soft, expanding pulse burst from the device, soundless, but deeply felt, like a bell inside the bones. All Senate transmission lines wavered. Screens across the building temporarily froze, not scrambled, but realigned. Information changed formats. Languages restructured. On the main tier above, Rask gripped the rail as a new stream surged across the primary laser plasma display. Symbols only half familiar crawled across the feed. Terran code. Unlabeled, undated, alive. What is that? Jarnus asked, eyes darting across the rapidly updating feed. Instructions, Threx said from behind them. Preceded into the Senate grid before Earth withdrew. It's not a message, it's a trigger. The information burst did not speak. It redirected. Sensor lattices across the chamber, rerouted to a new central framework, one built from zero-G logic trees and recursive lattice folds. As the chamber attempted to reassert its security posture, a secondary sequence overrode all manual input. The Terran core now glowed faintly, not with energy, but with designation, not broadcasting, syncing. Why now? Rask asked no one. Solon hadn't moved. Instead, a second pulse vibrated through the walls, faint, harmonic, but unmistakably system-deep. Rask recognized it. Authorization recalled, the only system-level phrase more rare than diplomatic override. Someone shut this down. Tarn Volrek barked from the adjoining corridor, storming in with a contingent of Senate command. He can't just walk in here without clearance. Solon looked up for the first time. One glance silenced every word. Not by threat, not even command. It was the stare of someone who had already calculated the outcome of resistance. Volrek gritted his jaw. Where's your crest? Where's your delegation? Solon spoke at last. His voice was steady and low, like the echo of something final. Earth has no delegation. We built the hall. The words didn't echo. They sank. He walked past the protesters. None moved, none followed. His coat brushed Rask's sleeve as he passed, eyes briefly locking. You should begin the count, Solon said. For what? Solon didn't reply. He entered the chamber proper. Behind him, the chamber's environmental systems recalibrated. Not warmer, not colder, known. On the upper deck, Threx rotated the updated projection feed, now populating the heads-up display. The map was shifting. Concordant relay posts began flickering, each one now carrying a triple-thread standard command frequency, Alliance parity echo, and a third vector. This vector isn't ours, he whispered. And it's not Concord, it's embedded. Rask leaned closer. Embedded where? Underneath our systems, Threx said. Under everything. Latent, not active. Sleeping. One location blinked into yellow status. Another followed. Volrek's voice was sharp. I want that relay shut down. Seize the device. But the moment they reached for it, the feed updated again. Attempted override detected. Jurisdiction bypassed. Monitoring continues. Jarnus nearly dropped his console. It's not defending itself. It doesn't need to. The system thinks it's in control. Rask exhaled slowly. Because it always was. Back in the chamber, Solon stepped beside the obsidian seat. He didn't sit. He didn't touch it. He looked at it, just once, and then turned to the chamber's central array. The lights dimmed. No alarms sounded. No warning tones. The displays shimmered into uniform format. One last relay initializing. At the bottom of every Senate stream, 4 untagged glyphs now rotated in slow sequence. Not Terran names, just this status. Active layer, observer condition, present speaker. None, Rask whispered. Then who do we speak to? And the answer came silently, through every sensor node, every shifted protocol. Ask the right question. Sector blinked. Harn Lys said flatly, his fingers still motionless above the console. Kranthus Gate. One relay drop. No interference. It just stopped existing. In the dim of Analysis Core 4, the air tasted dry and filtered, like breath pulled through canvas left too long in silence. No static, no residual heat. The room, embedded a kilometer beneath Concord's central relay tier, reacted with nothing. Not even the machine intelligence registered urgency. Tarn Volrek glanced up from the tactical overlay suspended in the center of the chamber. It'll reinitiate. System buffer lag. Solar wake proximity. We've seen it before. No. Lys stood now, back rigid. The logs didn't stagger, they terminated. Like the relay was extracted mid-broadcast. A cut that never tore, just removal. The heads-up display above them shifted without command. Not a flicker, not a malfunction, a redirection. One blink, and the Kranthus marker faded. No data freeze, no alarm spike, just a loss that tasted like something unspoken. Show me the log burst, Volric ordered. Lys tapped 2 glyphs. The footage didn't play. It unfolded. Images stacked side by side, outbound telemetry, thermal distribution, biosign routing. Then all 3 collapsed into one still frame. An empty telemetry core, time-stamped to nothing. Soundless, Rask entered without announcement. The moment his boots crossed the threshold, the air inside contracted, not colder, just more narrow. What did we lose? An entire relay tier. Lys answered. No fallback ping, no alternate grid shadow. It's not jammed, it's missing. Rask stepped closer, his eyes already adjusting to the revised sector map. Any comms from the neighboring systems? None. But they're not failing. They're stabilizing harder than usual. That's what makes this worse. Explain. Lys rotated the model. When a system dies, it cascades. Power fluctuation, planetary drift, coordinated panic. We see evidence. This was subtraction. Every tethered relay, reclassified before vanishing. Preemptive data nullification. Volric scoffed. So we lost a dead node. Could be sabotage. Could be internal. It's not. Lys pulled up another stream. One locked behind Earth's deprecated parity firewall, marked inactive for a century. The room went still. You're not supposed to have that channel, Volric said, stepping forward. I didn't. The system offered it. Lys tapped twice. When Solon entered the registry, the display unraveled with sickening grace. 3 sectors overlaid in real time. Kranthus, Beloved's Rim, and Dust Chain Fold, each marked with identical anomalies. Flickering input trails traced void-aligned vectors, the paths fractured mid-approach. No strike, no signal, no return. The pattern repeats, Lys said. 14 variables align. All 14 are flagged in Earth's dormant predictive archive. Their model mapped this. Rask's hand hovered above the interface, but didn't touch it. This was flagged before. 78 cycles ago, Lys replied. Voice tightened like a wire. Archived under extinction-based threat drift. Project code, Sable threshold. Volric's jaw flexed. Why would they share it with us now? Lys didn't blink, because the silence began to match the script. On the adjacent wall, the primary feed shifted again. Beloved's Rim marker blinked 3 times, then ceased. The light didn't fade. It inlaid itself into the grid, now reclassified as unreachable. Rask's voice dropped. How many? 6, maybe 7 systems. The deeper we go, the more the pattern repeats itself. Any shared factor? Lys hesitated. Yes. Volric was already tense. What? Earth defense scaffolds. Lys pulled the timeline wider. In every vanished sector, Earth once offered infrastructure under neutrality clauses, atmospheric filters, transit nodes, rooted transit layers. We dismissed them, let them decay, but none were ever decommissioned. Rask's breath slowed. They didn't leave markers. They left monitors. More than monitors, Lys added. These nodes weren't tracking the enemy. They were waiting for behavior alignment. The silence in the room deepened, not due to a drop in volume, but because reality began shrinking into definable horror. On screen, Dust Chain Fold dissolved. No signature, no final message. Volric pointed hard. We scrambled defense to the next sector. I want 2 warframes repositioned now, and a dragnet on any legacy Terran lattice. Scrub it from our internal systems. Cut the feed, Volric ordered. But the console no longer recognized him. In the chamber's center, the rotating octagonal glyph held steady, neither pulsing nor fading. No decorative frame, no interactive options, just silent presence. Across every data channel, overlays shifted, not one by one, but all at once, cascading like tiles slotted into place without gaps. Every sector that had remained untouched flickered, not with signal loss, with substitution. Harn Lys leaned forward, fingers poised above the main tier's diagnostic board. We're not detecting fleet formations. There are no warm signatures, no charge buildups. Rask stepped beside him, scanning the updated interface, Then what's changing? Lice activated the entropy cascade layer, a feature designed to flag system destabilization by heat signature inconsistency. The results were wrong. Instead of spikes or collapses, the graph drew smooth sloping arches, movement without motion, decline without drift. The systems aren't reacting, Lice murmured. They're reinterpreting physics. In Sector 10, a mining moon called Levrin 8 had orbited its primary star without deviation for 412 years. Its communications tower always ran a second behind due to signal buffering caused by minor gravitational scrapes along its ringed path. That delay vanished, not slowed, not optimized, nullified. The heads-up display didn't alarm. Instead, it updated with a new control node link. Relay condition, Terran embedded protocol active. Check the anchor registries, Rask instructed quietly. Lice didn't speak. He let the data unfold. On the map, blue rings formed with no broadcast lead-in. Each one emerged with terminal symmetry, no expansion phase, just full existence. The rings weren't overlapping, they were interlocking. 13 at first, then 21, then dozens, threading across systems the Senate no longer considered strategic. The rings didn't mark territory, they marked alignment. Those are nodal displacement anchors, Lice whispered, more to himself than anyone else. But they're not in orbit, they're in field. Volric frowned. What's their function? Target logic fold. They don't destroy. They rewrite vector behavior mid-path. Anything attempting trajectory toward a protected point is reclassified as exit-only mass. It never arrives. Rask narrowed his gaze. So if a ship tries to enter, Lice nodded. It leaves, even if it doesn't mean to. The silence was deeper than before. In Sector 12, a void ship, unmapped, non-registered, silent, drifted into the arc of one such anchor. There were no alarms, no defense deployments, no contact protocols. The ship's course bent. It didn't warp. It didn't burn. It simply reversed without slowing, its engines still burning forward. The ship fled the system against its intent. Volric muttered, "What the hell did we allow to root into our infrastructure?" "They never asked," Rask replied. "They offered open-source systems. We used them, thought they'd rust quietly. We didn't read the clause appendices. Laser plasma feeds above them scrolled new entries. System names had been restructured, condensed into numerical signatures. Names like Levrin 8 were gone. Now just Node 44, B vertical bar, active anchor, vertical bar, stable gradient. Where are these things housed?" Volric asked. "Everywhere we stopped maintaining infrastructure," Lice said, "and everywhere Earth built in redundancy." He brought up a systems map from 200 years ago. It was bloated, overly detailed, with 1,000 icons representing useless transit filters and uncalibrated buffer tubes. Lice scrubbed away every element marked non-critical. What remained resembled a cage. Each of these, he pointed, is positioned at stress convergence points, gravity overlaps, atmospheric bleed edges, quantum delay ridges. They're not defensive, they're predictive. Designed for what? Volric challenged. Lice tapped one ring that glowed at the center of the cage. It pulsed once, and the map recentered. For this moment, in the outer relay of Orden Loop, a fleet attempted maneuver. Not Senate, not Earth, not Concord. 5 vessels bearing untracked hull designs, the kind that moved without broadcasting, scavenged sectors, and vanished between epochs. They entered Node 51. They didn't come out. No flare, no distortion, just silence where trajectory had once been plotted. The map updated. A curved line now bridged that point to the larger lattice. The symbol, Protean lattice sync confirmed. Rask whispered, "How long has this been waiting?" "It doesn't wait," Lice said. "It watches until movement matches a stored threshold of deviation. Then it acts." From the far console, a junior analyst spoke for the first time. "If we're inside this thing, what else is programmed to react?" Lice didn't answer. Volric turned away from the display. "Someone needs to confront Solon. This is no longer diplomatic presence. This is annexation without declaration." He said nothing. Rask reminded him. "Exactly, that's the problem." Above them, the map rotated once more. Dozens of systems glowed, not red with threat, but blue with stability. Not enforced, not warned, insured. Rask stared at the updated Senate communication logs. No council votes, no new treaties, just unspoken compliance. Earth systems had never requested approval. They simply enacted directive. Protean lattice. Each section of the chamber lights adjusted, brightness modulated subtly by proximity to one of the activated nodes. Not error, not glitch, synchronization. Rask finally spoke. We've not lost control. Lyse looked up. We've transferred it. Outside the Senate sphere, in the inert orbit of a forgotten station, long since written off by trade routes, a single blue flare activated above its hull. Inside, silent systems pulsed back to life. No crew, no visitors. A wall-mounted panel blinked with slow pulses. One glyph, a node anchor rotating with solemn rhythm. Underneath it, activation level, finalization pending. The chamber no longer echoed. Every sound was absorbed, every action processed. No one had given permission. Earth never needed it. Your jurisdiction ends now. Tarn Volrek shouted, slamming his palm against the recessed override panel embedded in the center dais. His tone cut sharp, amplified across the Senate amphitheater as if force could replace authority. The panel flashed red, not with alarm, but indifference. A sterile response scrolled across the inset glass. Input denied. Command reassignment completed. User classification observed only. The words hovered above the control slot for a second longer than necessary, as if daring him to try again. The amphitheater floor glowed with rotating arcs of color-coded pulses. Normally, the bands lit per sector, blue for confirmed quorum, gold for proposal, red for emergency escalation. Today they flickered in sequences that no protocol register had documented. 12 rings, moving in synchronized counter-rotation, converged briefly, then separated. Again and again. Chairman Ivan Rask stood at the speaker platform's edge, unmoving. His hands were clasped behind his back, but the tension in his knuckles telegraphed more than the stone face he wore. From his right, Jorik Fenmar leaned in. They're not responding to procedural hierarchy anymore, not even backtrace pings. It's like the platform's logic stack has been rewritten. Rask didn't respond immediately. He studied the heads-up display curling from the tier wall. Concordant systems across the midband were tagged under Obsidian ArcNet. A lattice overlay shimmered between nodes. Linkages pulsed in faint geometric movement, forming concentric distortions that shifted before being perceived. Does anyone here know what ArcNet even is? Volrek snapped from below, voice fraying. Has any of you authorized Earth to implement full-spectrum overlay in core Senate jurisdiction? He turned, sweeping his gaze across the senators now slowly filling the upper tiers. A murmur passed among them, not consensus, not rebellion, something quieter. The subtle erosion of assumed sovereignty. We're debating shadows, he growled. This isn't defense, this is hijack. No one answered. Lights dimmed in sections above, casting the speaker well in uneven light. Each delegate's private console blinked softly, waiting, no longer asking. In the gallery, Solon remained seated. He had claimed no title, issued no statement, requested no vote. Still, the space around him felt rearranged, as if the architecture itself deferred. Volrek gestured to the plasma thread chart flickering above the quorum gate. Look at this. You see it? Red routes severed, blue corridors rerouted, neutral zones marked for archival. We're not participating. We're being divided. Rask adjusted his posture. His voice came slow and clipped. Every maneuver they've made has restored silence to collapsing sectors. Every override prevented systems from spiraling. Earth's actions, however unsanctioned, have been undeniably effective. Effectiveness is not legitimacy. Volrek snapped. Fenmar turned to Rask, voice hushed. Sir, we just received an encoded advisory. From Earth? No, Fenmar replied, tilting the relay forward. From Node 44. B. The anchor activated this cycle. There's no signature, just status updates. Observational echo confirms Terran logic, operating above Senate tier diagnostics. What does it say? Fenmar blinked. It says, protocol anchored, revisions underway, objection will not delay function. The sentence landed like a sealed door. Volrek pointed again. We can't operate under systems we didn't implement. We must sever the lattice, reclaim control infrastructure, and reassert Senate lead. Rask's tone turned glacial. And if that attempt destabilizes 5 planetary sectors, that's speculation. That's foresight. Lyse interjected, entering through the side corridor. I've spent 3 hours inside the underlying data structures. The ArcNet isn't just a response protocol. It's adaptive. It adjusts sector logic in real time based on entropy thresholds. If we pull it now, gravity wells realign without compensatory cushioning. Transit systems fail. Population drift begins. You'd kill 10 billion in 4 seconds. Volrek's eyes locked on Lyse. Then we call for withdrawal. Tell them to stand down. We don't need their systems if it means this level of control. Rask slowly looked toward Solon. You want to issue a diplomatic request? Volrek nodded. Yes. Then go ahead. Volrek swallowed. Now? Rask gestured toward the tier where Solon remained silent. He's here. Volrek stepped forward, voice rising slightly. Envoy Solon, on behalf of the Concord Galactic Senate, I hereby request the deactivation of Obsidian ArcNet protocols and the relinquishment of all embedded infrastructure command nodes. The silence that followed was surgical. Solon didn't blink, didn't tilt his head. His body language remained untouched. Nothing altered, not even posture. Then the room dimmed. Every senator's console displayed a brief message. 4 glyphs, untranslatable but instantly recognized. Behind them, on the master tier, the heads-up display rotated once, then projected a new string across the core lattice. Protocol retained. Authority not shared. Conditions not met for interruption. Volrek turned back to Rask, face drained. That was our request. That was the answer. And the answer, Rask said, was prepared long before we ever spoke. In the chamber floor, protocol lights began resetting. Not to Senate colors, not to debate functions, to unmarked sequencing, rotating soft white bands overlaid with muted blue arcs. They did not blink. They remained stable, grounded. Rask finally sat. His chair recognized him. A soft intake of air hissed near the rail, a signal of subsystem stabilization, one not aligned to Senate authority. Fenmar whispered, "There's nothing left to vote on." Rask nodded. "There's nothing we were voting on to begin with." Above them, the Senate beacon, a massive plasma-threaded obelisk that had hovered for centuries, began a subtle shift. The top rotated 7 degrees. A lattice of unfamiliar energy patterns projected through its outer shell. The symbol of Concord blurred, and beneath it, on every station, a new symbol spun silently. The octagonal observer ring. Earth had not requested entry. Earth had activated the architecture they'd built beneath the illusion of cooperation. Tarn Volrek sat without speaking. The Senate no longer governed. It received. It adjusted. It remained. But the initiative had already been surrendered to systems designed not for compliance, but inevitability. Signal code 4K just authenticated itself, Fenmar said, staring at the string as it scrolled into his command window. Unrequested, unbroadcast, unsigned. There's no source. It's self-originated. Rask didn't move from his seat. The words hung in the air longer than sound should. Not an echo, not resonance, just a line no one could cross without consequence. On the chamber's master display, Concord's internal logistics interface shifted. System designations lost their Senate tier prefixes. Gone were the familiar subgrid flags, departmental tags, and sectoral color coding. In their place appeared a single glyph, a white ring set into neutral black, no border, no origin field, just function. Across the interlinked chain, a new message flashed 3 times: Sovereign Directive, initiated. System condition, terminal override. Rask rose slowly, his chair retracting behind him without ceremony. That code was shelved during pre-decline crisis planning. It wasn't supposed to be executable. Fenmar tilted the relay again. Unless the executing entity embedded the override layer before the crisis existed. Which would mean, Volrek said hoarsely from the chamber tier, Earth wrote the directive into our fallback schema without declaring authorship. Lyse entered behind them, breath clipped but speech intact. They didn't hide it, we just assumed the null fields meant error. A sector map expanded across the nearest heads-up display, node lattices overtaking legacy Senate registry pathways. It was clean, efficient, but alien, only in that it didn't ask permission. Each system now bore 3 indicators: stabilization state, infrastructure sync, and override custodian. All 3 pointed to Earth. Volrich's voice dropped into a lower register. Where are the non-human civil sectors routed? Lice rotated the interface. Fallback grids restructured. Instead of centralizing by species or language, Earth's net groups by entropy gradients. Colonies are being redistributed based on their environmental survivability, nothing to do with their origin or culture. Bureaucratic annihilation, Volrich muttered. They're erasing identity in favor of efficiency. No, Rask corrected. They're preventing collapse by removing identity as a point of failure. The chamber lights lowered by exactly 1/3. Not enough to dim vision, just enough to match the ambient glow of Earth's logic tree overlays now running on the main floor. The tiles beneath the senator's feet pulsed slowly, matching the rhythm of background field compensation. Heads-up displays lining the upper delegation rails adjusted language formatting. Several didn't even reflect their home dialects anymore. The system had realigned everything into what it called interpretive neutrality, a simplified grammar schema, optimized for cross-faction comprehension. Rask spoke again, this time directing his words to Solon, seated just beyond the dais. You've reclassified our command chain, rerouted our civilian prioritization queues. What legal doctrine justifies this seizure? Solon stood. His coat didn't shift, his shadow didn't stretch, only his presence moved. Clause 77F Omega, he said. Rask blinked. That doesn't exist in our registry. It wouldn't, Solon replied. It was ratified under the Interspatial Transit Accord. Earth included it as a non-propagating clause. It only activates when a government's internal latency breaches 90% relative to entropy feedback. Fenmar frowned. We've never exceeded that threshold. You crossed it 36 hours ago, Solon answered, without emphasis. 17 core sectors fell into loop decision stacks. 8 failed to escalate emergency directives within actionable windows. 4 collapsed before notification cycles concluded. Volrich's fists clenched. You mean to tell us Earth's been tracking our hesitation ratios? No, Solon said. We've been measuring your ability to respond before denial becomes lethal. The room didn't shake, the floor didn't crack. The power shifted because it no longer needed to be hidden. All across the chamber, relay beacons blinked once synchronization. A final override message appeared on every heads-up display simultaneously. Status realignment, complete. Redundancy layer, accepted. Senate designation, archive mode. Command authority, bypassed permanently. Every Senate station attempted one last data push. Every push failed. The master relay didn't crash. It adapted, accepting the input, parsing it, and storing it under historical analysis, not as requests, not as challenges, as closure. Outside the chamber, control towers overseeing orbital logistics for 14 Senate worlds began redirecting their instructions through Earth's fallback cores. Food shipments rerouted themselves mid-flight. Refugee patterns shifted by autonomous reclassification. Medical support drones reassigned their pathways using entropy slope algorithms that didn't need council ratification. Lice tracked the vector spiral on one world. It's not chaos, it's continuity. Their system doesn't need confirmation because it calculates before movement begins. They removed the delay, Rask murmured. They didn't defeat our protocols, they rendered them obsolete. In the outer halls, diplomatic aides stumbled as entire language feeds switched mid-sentence. Data relays transitioned from regional to planetary coordination. Every override tag listed the same simple note, Directive 4K authorized by stored condition. Volrich stared at the laser display hanging above the quorum gate. The Senate crest flickered, then dimmed. In its place a white ring, surrounded by a silent rotating perimeter of data glyphs. No anthem played, no flag waved, just synchronization. He turned slowly, gaze finding Rask. What are we now? Rask looked back at him, at Solon, at the chamber he had sat in for 50 years. We're what remains when function outlives permission. From above, a single line of updated protocol entered the chamber feed. Judicial continuity preserved. Advisory status, symbolic only. Earth wasn't asserting control. Earth had overwritten the premise of governance. And the galaxy, in turn, obeyed not because it was told, but because there was now no available alternative. Motion carried pending quorum review. The words barely left Senator Olrev's console before the response flickered across every panel in the chamber. Motion denied. Jurisdiction status revoked. No alarm, no protest. Just clarity, delivered with the indifference of a system that no longer needed to explain itself. The floor's color grid shifted again. Blue and gold vanished entirely. In their place, a single white perimeter formed around the Senate floor, slowly rotating inward in 8 cardinal segments. The light did not pulse. It breathed, slow, cyclical, as if matching the collective exhale of a civilization realizing it had been bypassed. Varric Solon stood alone at the foot of the obsidian seat. He had not ascended the dais. He had not demanded attention, yet every sensor, every display, every remaining function in the chamber pivoted silently toward him, like gravity reasserting its center. The obsidian seat, untouched since foundation, remained cold and matte. No crest, no designation. Until now, it had absorbed light without ever offering reflection. Then, without warning, the seat shimmered, not bright, not loud, just a subtle glint, the kind that came not from polish but recognition, a faint, angular gleam cast from the chamber's revised lighting array. It reflected, only once. Every senator stopped speaking. The floor fell still, breath suspended across species that had nothing in common but governance. The only sound came from the subtle clicks of heads-up display systems recalibrating. Solon raised his hand, not high, not commanding, just enough. The lights dimmed in uniform reduction, 33%. Across every delegation tier, the chamber bathed in low ambient silver, cold, still, like dawn before consequence. His voice, when it came, didn't rise. It didn't need to. The seat was never a vacancy. Nothing followed. No clarifying statement. No rhetorical argument. Just that, one sentence. Like a final verdict read after centuries of silent testimony, Jurek Fenmar lowered his eyes, not in shame, but in recognition, as if understanding now that the chair had never been offered. It had been installed. Across the heads-up displays, a new sequence initialized. A pale ring, interrupted by a vertical axis glyph, rotated once. Omnis closure beacon. Armed, Chairman Rask moved to speak. His voice caught, not from fear, but from the absurd realization that nothing he could say would be relevant anymore. The seat gleamed again. The laser plasma displays now mirrored one another. Every terminal, every lens, every viewing panel reflected the same clean field. A single black background, one rotating signature, code OMCBX7, signal awaiting completion, witness required, present. Volrek stared across the tier. What does that mean? Lyse answered without turning from the feed. They left us one final moment, not for negotiation, for observation. We're not participants anymore, we're recorders. Fenmar leaned in toward Rask, his voice hushed. We tried to hold a vote on a war Earth ended before we even acknowledged it started. Rask nodded once, and now they've ended us, without violence, without permission, just design. Solon reached toward the armrest of the obsidian seat. He didn't sit, he simply touched the corner. A panel recessed, revealing a hidden module, uncharged, until now. A deep tone, subsonic, but felt in the bone, vibrated through the floor tiles. The white ring across the chamber pulsed once in sync, then the beacon activated. The chamber dimmed completely for 1 second. Only data remained. Laser plasma feeds lit with mirrored synchronization. Every senator's console now projected a phrase in Terran standard. Function fulfilled. Observation complete. Continuity transferred. From orbit, a single satellite reactivated. Not a war asset, not a relay hub. An archival probe coded with the symbol for closure, launched 3 centuries ago and never acknowledged. It lit once, then folded itself inward, disappearing without flare. A disappearance not of destruction, but of completion. Inside the chamber, the floor lights returned, but they no longer reflected political zones or territorial claims. Only one perimeter glowed. It circled the obsidian seat. The chair had never been empty. It had been reflective. It had been measuring. It had been waiting. Solon looked once toward the upper tier, gaze resting on Rask, then on Lyse, then finally Fenmar. Each saw something different in his eyes. Not arrogance, not judgment, closure. Then without a word, he walked, not out of ceremony, not toward anyone, just away. No one followed. The seat did not revert. It remained still, reflected once, then darkened. The Senate did not adjourn, it concluded, and every sensor across the quadrant, every unmanned system, every fallback beacon, quietly returned a single confirmation to the Earth-rooted lattice now woven invisibly beneath the stars. All observed, nothing left to judge. Echo lattice nodes just vanished from the relay map. Fenmar's voice was stripped of volume, not by emotion, but by disbelief folding into awe. Heads-up displays across the Senate tier dropped their overlays. The data didn't decay or shatter, it simply faded from relevance. Protocol symbols, trajectory grids, power status curves, all stripped clean like chalk from a board that had never truly belonged to the ones drawing on it. Solon was gone. No trace, no route, no departing transmission. The obsidian seat stood vacant again, though now acknowledged. Its reflection remained on the floor's core tile longer than logic permitted, the glint of presence that refused to be undone. The floor lights began to fade, not to darkness, but to neutrality. The chamber's glow now responded not to motion, nor order, but to absence, structured, deliberate, a silence designed. In Sector 43, a ship attempting to dock with an emergency relay station found its codes rejected, not blocked, retired. The Senate's emergency override had been rewritten, replaced by a logic string ending in the Earth glyph, the white ring, surrounded by 8 rotating vectors. Rask stood at the edge of the dais, watching as the final external feed streamed in Concord System 8, stabilized, resources rerouted, not under command, but via conditional orchestration. No fleets visible, no authority flagged, just planetary equilibrium, returning. He spoke quietly, not to anyone present, but to something that had already concluded. They didn't win. Lyse answered without looking up. They never fought. In Archive Sector Theta, an analyst pulled up the full registry. Every Earth-encoded fallback system had entered completion mode, each entry closed with the same procedural note, deployment finalized. Input not required. Across the neutral colonies, ships once thought to be atmospheric stabilizers began retracting. No beacon, no guidance transmission. They folded inward and vanished, not into jump space, not along relay lines, out, gone. But behind them, nothing collapsed. The systems remained online. Medical AI restructured care models. Environmental management adapted to new radiation patterns before the suns had finished their arcs. Nothing needed attention. Nothing waited. In Senate Sector 12, a minor aide discovered a data prism cube embedded behind the main transit lattice node. It hadn't been there an hour earlier. When activated, it projected a 3-tier cascade: defense schematics, fallback civilization continuity plans, code-limited access protocols available to non-human factions only. The message accompanying it was 6 lines long. This is not inheritance. This is survival scaffolding. Earth remains absent, not as gesture, as necessity. Do not mimic us. Build differently. The cube faded once finished. Its casing collapsed into dust, not self-destructed, expired. Volric, staring at the layered projection from the floor-level beam, said nothing. He had not spoken since Solon's sentence. There was nothing left to challenge, nothing to protest. The seat had spoken without speaking, and the result was irreversible. Above the chamber, a long inert relay dome flickered with final movement. The beacon's axis rotated one last time, then aligned into stasis. Every tracking system logged its condition as complete. Rask turned to Lyse, a final question ready. How do we govern now? Lyse responded without inflection. We don't. We document. One by one, the Concord systems restructured themselves. No fanfare, no message, just reorganized existence. Earth's vessels had not stayed to oversee the new order. They had left instructions. In the central archive chamber, a final recording unlocked itself. Video only. No timestamp. The speaker wore no rank, just a man, standing before a relay gate under a Terran sky that no longer matched any known planetary atmosphere. He looked into the lens. If you are seeing this, then the mirror held. He blinked once, which means you've seen what happens when you mistake cooperation for permanence. Earth's role was never diplomacy, it was alignment. We didn't leave the chair empty because we refused to sit. We left it empty to see who would notice that it still faced forward. The message ended without cue. The screen dimmed. In the upper galleries, representatives did not speak. They watched the seat. They watched the chamber. They watched what had been left behind. No fleet, no banner, no request. just structure. The white ring rotated one final time on the floor, then stopped. Not like it froze, like it completed its cycle. Rask placed his hand on the rail, not to steady himself, to acknowledge that this, the quiet, the absence, the terrifying grace of function replacing ritual, was now the galaxy's bedrock. And then, for the first time in Senate recorded memory, every relay went silent at once. Not broken, not jammed, just ended. Outside, in the atmosphere above the former Senate's core world, the sky shimmered, not with force, with farewell. In that final act, Earth didn't remain to witness gratitude, because Earth never came to be seen, it came to remember, to correct. And now that correction was done, the galaxy survived, but never again would it mistake silence for absence. The empty seat had not been empty, it had been a mirror, and now it reflected back nothing, because Earth had already left, just as it always meant to, just as it warned, and just as history would finally begin to understand.